the word that essentially summarizes all of trauma is safety. Healing trauma, safety. Safety is such a big word. Now, trauma, in a nutshell, is our brain's way of having us avoid going into experiences that it perceives to be threatening to our safety. That's what trauma is. We have memory centers in the brain, the hippocampus and the amygdala. They both store memories. And if there's something that happens to us that we perceive subjectively as a threatening experience, again, subjectively, could be something small when you're young and naive, you don't understand the world, and something happens that's not actually a big threat, but you perceived that it was, that instantly, that memory creates an emotional signature where it has a certain level of threat associated with it, which will therefore put out certain layers that the level of protection and trauma will be sized according to the perceived threat. And so if you look at the way that Richard Schwartz talks about trauma, I really like the way that he talks about it. He's the founder of Internal Family Systems, which is an amazing modality. Again, I feel like there is a lot out there that has benefits and flaws, and I'll go through what I perceive those to be. This is just my opinion. I'm still on my own journey of healing. I've been in this space very heavily for the last 6 to 7 years, but I'm still learning. And I've been in the space for longer, but very heavily for the last 6 to 7 years. So Richard Schwartz sees that when we have a painful experience, a traumatic experience, the version of us that experiences it gets frozen in time as the memory and fragmented and tucked away deep. And the way that he labels it, the language he uses, is it gets exiled. There's a part that gets exiled and becomes disintegrated. It disintegrates. You become less whole because you've got this now part that is frozen in time that's gone, there was a really unsafe memory. And that usually what happens when we're younger and we have childhood trauma is at the moment that we experience the trauma, the environment isn't safe enough to process the experience. And so the emotion and somatic holding of the trauma gets buried deep within our psyche, gets memorized and stored in the body. So a metaphor that's usually used with trauma is that using the metaphor of an animal and how they experience trauma. In the Serengeti, you imagine a wild antelope or an impala that just got caught by a lion, and the lion has just grabbed it, shook it a bit. It's got its mouth around its neck and it's suffocating it. But then the lion gets distracted by something, lets go of the impala. It's still alive, but it's kind of playing dead. And the moment that the lion has been distracted and looks away, the impala gets up, shoots away, escapes the lion's grip, and gets away. Now, that's a traumatic experience in the physical sense, right? I'll explain trauma a little bit deeper in a sec. But in the physical, like there was a life-threatening experience. Safety was jeopardized. So that impala has gone, really scary, dangerous experience there. I am now going to avoid anything that looks remotely like a lion. But the point that I'm trying to make here is the impala will then go away to a place that it perceives to be safe, and the threat's gone, and then it'll involuntarily shake. And it'll process the trauma somatically and release the tension, let the experience energetically escape the body, and then it will move forward. It'll shake it off and it'll keep going. Now, if we're a child in a situation that we're perceiving as super unsafe, if we don't feel that we get to safety, like the impala removed itself from the proximity to the line, and then it shakes off. If you're a kid and you had something, whatever it was that was traumatic for you, whether it was sexual abuse or whether it was a really scary situation where you were verbally yelled at, whether you were smacked, or whatever the situation was, an animal bit you. If you were in the situation where it was happening, like for me, for example, I got yelled at so much as a kid. And when I was being yelled at, I was such in shock that I didn't have the capacity to process that. So I didn't get all that energy out of my body. Remember, emotion, because trauma comes with somatic and emotional components. Somatic means body. So you can get really stuck in the body and you can see people's, I have so many things to talk about here. I'm just going to keep letting this all flow. But emotion means energy in motion. So when a impala is shaking, it's letting the energy, it's giving the energy motion. So it's releasing the energy and its emotion. It's letting it out, shaking it off, and it leaves the body. So it's clean. We are in and out creatures. Experience comes in, emotion needs to be pushed out. If experience comes in, but we freeze and we don't get to a safe situation to let the energy out, the emotion out, the energy in motion, we don't let it out, it gets stuck. How do we know this? How does it actually, because you have lots of, as again, Richard Schwartz would say, exiled parts, frozen, fragmented versions of yourself from different points of trauma in your childhood that are just buried deep within yourself and causing energetic blockages. And because you have disintegrated yourself or fragmented parts, you are not experiencing the wholeness of what it feels like to be your most authentic self, because you have all these lost parts. And so when you actually do trauma work, you're remembering things that you've suppressed. The trauma work that I've done with people, and a really interesting thing that happens is that oftentimes when I do inner child work with people, as they start to create more safety with their inner child, at whatever age their inner child first enters their awareness, which will usually be 6, 7 years old, that just naturally, organically, I never talk about this with a client, but then a younger version will start to come in. And people remember things. It's so wild to think that someone could ever forget this, but people forget being sexually abused because the part attributed so much pain and it went into such a freeze response that exiled part gets buried so deep, they literally forgot that they were sexually abused. And I've had a lot of memories myself come up as an adult, the more I've done this work, that I completely forgot about. And when we remember these experiences, we are taking members, exiled parts of ourselves, inner children that are fragmented and frozen in time and stuck down deep in our consciousness. We're remembering them. We're taking those members that we've disintegrated and we're reintegrating them. We're remembering them. We're bringing them back in and we become a little bit more whole. We feel a bit more safe and we navigate our life with a bit more freedom and confidence and wholeness and fulfillment. And that is what the trauma journey looks like or how it functions. So the question really then becomes, well, what do we need to do in order to heal these exiled, fragmented parts and reintegrate them, remember them back into our consciousness? And the word that I started this podcast with and highlighted strongly is safety.